March 18th, 1996 is a day that's woven into the fabric and the culture of our department. Obviously, this was a devastating incident for the families involved, for our members, our department, our community, and it really had impacts across the fire service, across the nation. The documentary you're about to review is a culmination of hundreds of hours of interviews, of an exhaustive review of the after-action reports and the radio reports from that day. You'll also see that we have a vast amount of firsthand accounts from folks that knew Frank and Johnny the best, as well as those that were on the scene of that fateful day. After the incident, the department made two promises. One, that we would never forget. We would never forget Frank and Johnny, the lives that they led, as well as the sacrifices that they made. And number two, that the department would learn all it could from the incident and do everything in our power to never let an incident like that happen again. So thank you for reviewing this documentary. It helps us keep both those promises.
When I am called to duty, God, whatever flames may rage.
Give me strength to save some life, whatever be its age.
Help me embrace a little child before it's too late.
Or save an older person from the horror of the fate.
Enable me to be alert and hear the weakest shout.
And quickly and effectively to put the fire out.
I want to fill my calling and to give the best in me.
To guard my every neighbor and protect his property. And if according to your will, I have to lose my life, please bless with your protecting hand my children and my wife.
Amen.
Johnny loved being in the fire department. You know, Johnny loved the job. He loved coming to work again. You know, always willing to do whatever it took to learn, to be better, to do the things that it took to be a good firefighter. Johnny was everything about sports. You got him on the softball field. He was an uber competitive person. I mean, he loved to bat. He was very good. You know, he could hit a lot of home runs for us playing, and I'd go out into the back of Station 3 or whatever, and he'd go out there and swing the bat for 30, 40 minutes in the afternoon just to get his swing right.
The biggest thing I remember about Johnny, number one, he was a great firefighter, but he had that smirky little smile he has. It wasn't a smirk, it was just, that was his smile, and he always seemed to have it. The majority of the time, he was always smiling, just a happy-go-lucky kind of guy. Fantastic firefighter.
Johnny was very conscientious, knew his job, was a good worker, fun-loving, liked to play jokes. Of course, everybody did back then. Very family-oriented. He and Allison had been married for a while, and of course, they had little Jordan. Very much in love with Allison. She would come up for lunches, and then she would bring Jordan up when she had him, but they were always kissy face and all that, real close to her. And it was always good to see that with any young couple.
One thing I respect about both Johnny and Frank, they were both very strong family They cared very much about their family, you know. And Johnny had the one son, and of course, Allison was pregnant with their second son when the incident happened. And Frank, you know, he would take Stephen with him all the time. You know, Stephen would go on these trips with Frank, and so it caused a very strong father-son bond there, which I think is great. What Johnny was to sports, Frank was to being a fire buff. I mean, taking pictures, and he was really big into photography and going to see other fire departments and learn about other departments. And a lot of that stuff that he would find at these other departments, he would bring back if it was just a different way to put a cross lay in there that he learned from another department he's at that worked very well up there, that he would bring that kind of stuff back to the department and share that. It wasn't like he was just going off and getting this wealth of knowledge and not sharing it, which I always thought was, you know, a credit to Frank that he would do that. And as much as I thought, and I do love the fire department, I can't touch Frank how much he loved the fire department. The fire department was everything to him. I mean, he just loved it. It was in his blood.
Frank was a great guy, though. It was a lot of fun. He was a very techie guy. That's not a word, but I'll make it up word today. He loved technical stuff. He was and loved the fire department. My God, Frank loved the fire department, and he was smart, and he was always talking about different things in fire services with other departments. But he was always in the technical parts of anything. Both Frank and Johnny both were great, but I've worked with Frank on so many fires, and he didn't rush around, he moved around. He was always there, and he could do anything, any part of the fire service that had to be done, he could handle it.
Both of them were real good firefighters. Frank had more time in than Johnny did. He was a fire buff, was with the Tidewater fire photographers, and he was all the time listening on his scanners and stuff at other cities, you know, like New York and some of the big cities, and talking about somebody's got a job.
The culture was, no matter what it cost, you get in, you put the fire out. No matter what type of beating you took, that was the culture.
So there wasn't a whole lot of safety, you know, factors in place for the firefighter.
We would get in and you take some heat. We've melted them. I've melted several helmets. I've got one that my original helmet I started with, it's got bubbles all over it, and that's okay. That's just how we did things.
Old school fire service was seen as a lot of brawn. It was extremely aggressive.
Always aggressive for the most part, but that was the way we were trained.
Everybody was strong firefighters, and we'd get in and get the fire done.
We would put out a lot of fires. We weren't having a lot of fires get out of control because we were standing back and not moving quick enough. And so, which to me is, I think I agree with. I mean, if you stand around outside waiting for something, all it is the fire's getting more intense inside there. And you could have a much worse situation. Kind of set the tone to who we were.
There was no breathing apparatus.
You know, we didn't really wear SCBA in the beginning.
Maybe there was one breathing apparatus that was kept in the rear compartment in a green box. And if you put it on, you know, you were labeled sometimes being a sissy.
Some people would say that's reckless. I never felt like we operated recklessly. Aggressive, yes. Hard-nosed, yes. Do we have some strong firefighters? Absolutely.
And we had a lot of smart guys and tough guys on the job at the time.
As far as Johnny and Frank goes, that fire did not kill them. We did. The way we fought fire, we were taught, didn't have much to it, turn everybody around, quick as you can. And that's what Johnny did.
They were two very, very smart guys. Johnny was super aggressive, and Frank was super smart. So between the two of them, you couldn't have had two better people in there. As far as their knowledge and what they could have done right or wrong, you know. So to even question that is not right. Our policies weren't in place properly, but those two individuals were the best of the best. So it could have happened to any of us, right?
Got to work that morning and looked in the book, and there was a extra leave slot. And so I called the chief and said, hey, I got a lot of stuff I want to kind of get done before I leave town.
They had assigned someone from Station 1 to replace Hudgins. That person called in sick. So that was already scheduled for him to go to Station 3. So when I arrived at Station 4, I was told, Bridge, you got to swing to Station 3. So I'm like, okay, so I'm getting my stuff together, and Frank had his pillow, and I said, it's my swing turn. He said, Bridget, I'll take it for you. It's not a big deal. I'm like, okay. So he went in my place.
They sent Frank over, and Frank got over there. I went ahead and went home and started, you know, doing some of the run around I needed to get done before I left town.
Johnny was in charge. By this time, Frank had gotten there. You know, they swung him in from Station 4. You know, so we started our everyday work. You know, we had breakfast. We started cleaning the station, you know, like we normally do. Johnny was trying to plan out what he wanted to accomplish during the shift. So it was just a normal day.
I was the assistant chief, and I guess I was like number 2 at the time in the department with the chief and then me and then Ed. My day started routine. It was just a routine day. You come in, you know, you get your coffee, check your emails, find out what's going on.
I was division chief of operations. On that particular day, we were actually having a division chief staff meeting over coffee at a restaurant a couple of blocks over on Battlefield Boulevard.
We backfilled our Stumpy Lake station, which is 19. So we knew that morning when we came in, we were quick to get over there so they could get, because we got to go all the way to Bird Neck Road from Stumpy Lake. So you're trying to make the change pretty quick. And we got over there fairly fast.
We had the old tiller ladder at Station 2 that was going to need some work done to it. We dropped it off, we stood in there for a little while talking to the guy, and then the call came in. And when we left there to go to the call, we got about 2 blocks and we realized we had left a radio at the business. There was only one radio on our truck, so we made a quick U-ey, shot back, ran in there and got it, got back on the truck and took off.
That there was a possible structure fire at Advance Auto on Indian River Road. So I called Battalion 2 on the radio and told him, I said, you know, can you pick that call up for me? You know, me thinking that, you know, it's probably a BS call.
Anyway, we respond. The right turn off the ramp on the road could be down to Providence, hang a right, left on Sparrow, you know, right down to the Belo grocery store, which is on the corner there. So I didn't actually go to Indian River Road. I just turned into the shopping center, straight down in front, and I stopped right in front of the Advance Auto Parts store, directly in front of the front door. Johnny's in the right-hand seat. Frank is in the right-hand jump seat, and Frank is all geared up, MSA bottle on, everything good to go. I'm looking. I don't see anything. There's no smoke, no flame, no nothing. Johnny's on the radio giving a report, but we saw nothing.
I got there about the same time the engine did, and they said, we got it, it's all good, and I didn't even get out of the car if I remember correctly. And then as soon as I hit Sparrow Road, dispatch said, hey, they got another alarm or something. Anyway, I went back.
Now I can see people, customers still in the store. I can see employees behind the counter working. No one seems to be concerned. No one seems to be afraid. There's no emergent activity. Johnny and Frank go walking behind the counter. They start going towards the back of the store. So I walk inside and I'm looking. I see nothing. I smell nothing. Everything at this point looks clear to me. It couldn't have been more than a minute or so. And Johnny comes on the radio calling me, and he says, I want you to reposition the engine on the back side of the building. As I pull away from the front entrance, I look to my right and I can see smoke coming out of the eaves of the roof line. Not a lot, just a little. And I'm thinking, I didn't see anything, didn't smell anything when I was standing in the store, but we got smoke.
Johnny come on the radio, he said, well, we've got a slight smell of smoke. I don't remember what his word was, whether we think it's a light bulb or something, but it's very faint. You can turn the equipment around, we got it.
I think they said it was light smoke showing inside the building. And then we heard Johnny get on the radio and cancel all equipment. Mark said, we're going to continue on. We're just going to go to Advance Auto.
The engine's pulling around back. And then I heard somebody say, yeah, we got a fully engulfed or something like that, to that nature. And I can hear sirens coming from the distance. I said, y'all want me to start vacating the buildings? And he said, yeah. I said, we got a bar next door. They're moving.
I come down behind the building and I see a couple of Vepco trucks. Well, Vepco back then is now Dominion Energy. The vision of the back door was blocked because they had put a trailer, like a 55-foot tractor trailer without the tractor. They had sat it right there by the back door. So you actually have a corridor going in there. And where my engine was positioned, I actually could not see the back door. I had to walk around the front of my engine, go past the edge of that trailer for me to look down to see the back door. So I took the nozzle, advanced it down, started straightening out the line, tried to give him enough line that he could actually advance it into the interior. Back to the truck, charged the cross lay. At this time, Frank, if memory serves me right, is putting water on the edge of the roof where the fire had already broken through. I've got the engine pumping. I've got both lines charged. Johnny goes from the driver's door where I helped him bottle up. He goes back to the back door of the auto parts store and he gets the nozzle and he goes in. Well, when I saw him do that, I stopped and I looked at Frank. Frank's probably 20 feet, 25 feet from me. So I run over to Frank and I tap him on the shoulder. I said, hey, Johnny just went in the back door by himself. Get over there and back him up. So Frank closed down the nozzle, what he was doing, and he went into the back door of the auto parts store as well to back up Johnny. That was the last time I ever saw either one of them.
And just in the distance from Valley Stream, going down Sparrow Road, we could see the smoke starting, and it's increased. It built up pretty quick. I thought, man, that's a pretty big escalation this short, just a matter of a minute.
I get on the radio and I call. I need a second due engine to lay me a 5-inch supply line. I'm on the back side of the building. Engine 1 backed into my location, pulled the 5-inch line off of his truck. Reggie Meads was the captain. He was in charge of Engine 1.
I called him calling a second alarm, and I knew that was going to be us. So we jumped on the engine and took off. I could see the column of smoke long before we got there.
We pulled a 5-inch line off. I drug it past my engine, wrapped it around the front tire of Engine 3, and off Engine 1 goes, laying a supply line to the hydrant. And Captain Meads went up to the back door of the auto parts store to assess what was going on.
It's a long layout to the hydrant out on the far end of the shopping center. So I told Carl, I said, go in and lay out there and get it set up, give us a supply line. He said, okay. So he took off, laid the line, and it's building quick. I mean, it's about every minute, it's just escalating big time. Flames starting to come through the roof and all. And,
So then the call came back in before we got, I think, into to Kempsville Road. Before we got to Kempsville Road.
They came back on the radio very excited. Hey, we've got something. get everybody back here.
Still haven't gotten any water yet, and I'm thinking, all right, well, it's going to take a couple minutes for them to get to the hydrant, get set up, and get the water to me.
We got back on Rokeby heading back to Sparrow, and halfway down the road, we could smell something burning. You could smell wood burning.
Fire was really building in its intensity. More rapid development than any fire that I had ever seen.
Of course, at that time, all the other Station 2 equipment and stuff was pulled up there. Everybody else went to the front. We were the only ones in the back.
I know they're flowing water inside, and I'm starting to get concerned because quite a few minutes have gone by, and I'm thinking, I don't have a lot of water left here. And once this runs out, the guys got to come out.
We got fire in the fingers. That's Charlie. Got four by George and the outside.
The communications on the radio, it was nonstop. We were still on the primary frequency, and not only was everyone on the fire scene trying to communicate and talk, but when EOC dispatched another call anywhere in the city, that was taking radio time.
Before we got to the scene, we'd lost the radio. It had fused out or something where you couldn't hear anything. So by the time I got to the scene, there was no radio to listen to. You just couldn't hear anything because it had fused out.
I don't really remember exactly how it happened, but we realized there was something going on. A column of smoke was wide, extremely wide. At that point, we weren't dispatched. Mike said, get on the truck. And we jumped on and we left and we started heading that way.
The manager of the auto parts store had left the front door open. The back door was open. We had 25 to 30 knot winds that day, not only feeding the fire from the roof as it burned up there, but coming through the interior of the store.
We were actually having a division chief staff meeting over coffee at a restaurant a couple of blocks over on Battlefield Boulevard from headquarters.
And they had just delivered the food to our table when all of our pagers went off simultaneously. And they said, contact headquarters immediately. They're dispatching us.
Chief Cook and Chief Murphy, they rode together. And then Chief Best and I, we rode together. He drove.
And we pull out on Battlefield, heading north, and we saw the thermal column. I mean, it was a heavy thermal column. Now, you got to understand, this is like, I guess they dispatched us right around 11:45, maybe 10 minutes to 12. So this event was not, it was, like 20 minutes into it. So we're heading north, and the radio is going crazy.
We didn't have headsets back then. Mike is yelling at me through the glass, what's going on? I didn't have a radio, so we're going, and he's relaying to me what's happening.
When we rolled in, I knew where the primary hydrant was at McDonald and Indian River. And we hit that because nobody was on it. And we grabbed that and rolled in, set the squirt up, and put the first sustained water from our tail squirt on the engine on the advanced fire. The off space next to the bar was empty. So I took out a plate glass window, and then we moved all the ceiling tiles so that we could see up to where we could see the roof, so we knew we had no advancement there. And then went to firefighting from there.
As we pulled up, engine 3 was kind of angled and lines are going into the entrance door to advance. I said, Herbie, where's Johnny and Frank? He said, well, they must have gone out the front door because they haven't come out here. And it was getting pretty heavy in there, from basically nothing to all hands on deck within a matter of just a few minutes, just because the radio was totally overcome with people responding, people on the scene, who's doing what. Nobody knew what we were doing. I had no idea what everybody else was doing. I didn't know if Johnny and Frank were inside, out front, or what. And in the meantime, Carl had laid out, had to come up short of the hydrant. I know he'd been trained on it in rookie school and all that, where you split it, do 2.5. He didn't do it, I'm not sure why. And he tried getting on the radio, let me tried different channels, but anyway, never could get through to me, tell me he couldn't make it. So I'm not aware of what his situation is. Last time it's escalating enough that I told Herbie, I said, we've got the back engine up here. It was starting to blow enough, it was going to take over the engine.
We were coming down Battlefield, and you could see off in the distance the great plume of black smoke going up. So, you know, I hired up my guys to go ahead and bottle up and get ready, because we're going to hit the ground running when we get there.
As fast as I can get us there, and I mean, I was driving very aggressively. And of course, the adrenaline now is running because you got that adrenaline in your foot, because you see the whole time we were responding, we saw the thermal column, and it was getting worse. And then
I didn't hear all that, so I'm not going to say I did. I didn't hear any of that. What I did hear was that Henry Deal came back onto the radio and said, "Did you hear that, Chief Williams?" And Chief Williams did not hear that.
I remember Charlie Williams said to me, he said, "Dwight, what was that?" I said, "Chief, I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't make out what was being said." And it might have been part of the radios because they weren't that good, and also too close to the equipment.
I mean, I hit excessive rates of speed, dodging and deflecting traffic, trying to get there as fast as we could, but he was bent down. I don't know if he was bent down with his ear trying to hear the speaker, you know, and he was switching back and forth. He had his hand on my radio. He was going back and forth.
I can hear people getting cut off. I can hear battalion chiefs, you know, talking and people walking over each other. But I can take you back to the intersection of Battlefield Boulevard and Volvo Parkway where Lowe's is at. And as we went through that intersection, I can remember listening to that radio traffic and trying to sort out and get a mental picture.
We were on Battlefield when Ed told me, he said, I think we've lost. I think we've lost some firefighters. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that feeling. And I'll never forget the look on his face when he told me that.
It's hard. It's hard.
Did anybody hear that last transmission? What did he say? Did anybody hear this last transmission?
By that time, Carl come back around the back of the building because he had to walk back around her to tell me, and it's probably, I don't know, 1,200 feet, something like that.
It's building quickly, and I'm still not getting any water from engine one. So I remember I got on the radio and called engine one, and I said, "I'm getting close to running out of water. I need water."
By the time we got there, jumped off the truck, you couldn't see in the door. You couldn't see in the windows. It was just complete black smoke. Dominion Power had been in the back cutting power off to one of the other units there, and when they did, they hit the line and they sent a power surge through the entire system. So it wasn't just one little spot that had a problem, it was through the whole attic area.
The last thing I heard from Johnny was bring in some pike poles and help us pull some ceilings. Anyway, Mike Conley and I start heading to the front door, and we get there, and there's nothing but black smoke. You couldn't see 3 inches in the building except for where the black smoke's trying to come out, and then it's being pulled back in just like this. So I turned to Mike and said, "Mike, there's a really big fire in there," because you could feel the air coming past you. It was sucking air through the front doors.
We had gone up to gotten pike poles and had gone to the front door, ready to go in, make entry through the front. Chief Williams came running over, because we were right at the door getting ready to go in. Chief Williams came over and hit Dwight on the shoulder and went like that. You know, tell us to back up. No sooner that we backed up, the whole roof opened up, the sky opened up, and it was flames 200 foot high. And there was so much heat coming off of it that we had to move the ladder. We had to back the ladder up. Chief Williams saved Dwight and I. Give me a minute.
It wasn't sustainable to go inside. From the front of the structure, there was no way to make any kind of an interior attack. It was just a totally defensive fire when we arrived.
I came back in, checked the bathroom, and as I'm walking back out, I'm walking outside now. Flames, if I remember correctly, it was like a 10 or 15 foot wide sidewalk out front. Those flames were horizontal.
As far as radios, I never heard anything except a squeal on the radio. We operated fairly independently for a long period of time, and not being able to talk to the battalion chief that was on scene, because by then he was in the back of the building and we were out front, and I didn't even know he was in the back of the building. I just didn't see the chief, which is a man I highly respect and who took a lot of personal, it tore him up, and I still respect him to this day.
We knew we couldn't go inside. I mean, there was no way, even after a couple of minutes, you could have gone in with a hand line because the fire was already blowing out the entrance door and there was no other access to anything.
Somewhere about this time, I didn't realize it, but the roof had caved in. I don't remember seeing it cave in. I don't remember hearing it, but again, there was so much noise that it was difficult for me to hear a lot of stuff. I know that the fire just shot up. I could hear small, and I'll call them explosions, from inside the auto parts store, and I'm just assuming these were flammable liquids, you know, igniting from the fire. As everything just went to hell, my thoughts were, Frank and Johnny probably abandoned the hose and went out through the front of the building, because initially they had walked from the front to the back, and we're not talking about a far distance either. I looked up at the fire truck, and the red lights on the right-hand side were starting to melt. I can see the paint starting to bubble. I'm thinking, man, I got to move the truck. I got to move it now. The engine ran out of water, never got supplied from engine one. Get these nozzles, help pull them back. So the two VEPCO guys joined in. I got in the truck, I moved it back, and I remember looking back at the 1.5 or 1.75 attack line that Johnny and Frank used to go in the back door, and I saw that was burned in two.
From there, it seemed like it was all chaos because we're wondering where the water. I think engine 2 was the first one to get up there next to us that brought water, and they were having problems with engine 1, couldn't find the hydrant and stuff. It just, a lot of things just started, you know, snowballing and going bad, and all of a sudden Richard turns around to me and his eyes are about this big. He said, "Mike, we got 2 guys in there." I said, "What?" We had no idea.
I was still the only guy on the south side of the building, the only piece, and my piece was done. I was out of water. I was useless. Engine 4 came in, and they were a squirt. The lay that engine 1 started, but ran out of hose before it got to the hydrant. The beach engine went ahead, finished the lay, connected to the hydrant, and they supplied water to engine 4, the water that I was waiting on.
It was like, holy crap, man, this is like a lot of fire. Somebody with us busted the glass on the bar to go through, just took it out so that we had clear, instead of going through a door, we were going through that. They were saying the back was a problem. That was just myself and Mike, but they told Keen to help get a water supply. And he laid out from across, I mean, way back. He used all our 5-inch, 3-inch, he had gone down to like everything we had to get a water supply established because there wasn't one yet.
And once we got there, it was more or less a face-to-face with Marvin Harris, Chief Harris. And he wanted us to go around back and assist Engine 1 with manpower. He says, as you go back, check these buildings, make sure everybody's vacated. As we turned to go toward the auto parts store at the back, we came upon Chief Williams. He was worried to death. He says, I got 2 men missing, 2 men missing. And Reggie and Herbie had just moved engine 3 away from the structure because it was getting damaged with heat. David Elliott came walking around, and there's a picture of David sitting on the concrete. He's got this dazed look in his face, and that's exactly what hit us when we came around. And I was asking him, who's inside, who's inside? And all I could say is, I don't know, I don't know. There's 2 of them in there, I don't know.
I remember out front feeling one way, and then when we went through the back, I felt another, you could just feel it. And I don't mean any disrespect by this, but it out front felt normal, and out back it had and I say this not in a bad way, but it was like a carnival for me. I see a chief, and he's an older fella, and he's balding, and he's got soot all over him. He's covered, he's got ash all over him. And I just remember thinking, okay, that's not normal. We start hearing about somebody missing. And Mike, Captain Gurley said, the chief, what's going on? He goes, I'm missing two guys from engine 3. Well, just at that second, a helmet went by with a 3 on it. And I said, Chief, no, there's a, and I'm feeling good, like, no, there's a 3. And he said, no, son. And he said, no, son, like that, like, you know, no, son, that's my driver. And I was like, God. And he pointed over to the line at the back door, I guess that nozzle was hooked to, and it was burned in 2. And it was severed like an artery had severed. You know what I mean? I just never forget it, the way it was burned. It wasn't clean cut. It looked like it had been like filleted raggedly, you know? And he said, no, they were on that line. And, you know, that hit me. He knew something, I mean, obviously, right? And so we were like, all right, well, we'll get a line and go in. And he said, no. He goes, no, y'all stay here.
2 of our brothers were missing. There was some urgency to find them. We had to get in there, we had to find them. We couldn't lose them, this couldn't be happening. There was a mentality that we used to have, and hopefully it never creeps back in, that if it can happen, it wouldn't happen in Chesapeake.
We had to, you know, do what we had to do, but yeah, that was unreal. I hope none of y'all ever have to find out.
Not hearing what was going on, you know, and just kind of being shocked, like, what do you mean they're still inside? They can't be still inside. This building is just, you know. So it wasn't like something we knew immediately. It was just something we're still trying to find out. They're not safe. At that point, it might have been a third alarm. The entire front of Advance Auto, there was nothing but fire. That's all you could see was fire. I didn't know that the roof was already gone. I guess in my head, I was thinking that there was a partial collapse. I wasn't thinking that the entire roof system collapsed. So when I saw ladder 2 starting to set up, all I was doing was concentrating. Clarence and I were just pulling 5-inch off, and we were just trying to get water because we knew they had no water set up yet. I want you inside with this hose line. You and Wynn take this hose line and you go through the restaurant and go through the back. And so that's what he and I did. I mean,
once we got to the back door and water finally came, I opened it up. I was on the lead, Wynn was behind me, to try to get some of the smoke out, and started advancing in the doorway, maybe, I don't know, 5-10 feet or whatever. And of course, you know, you're sucking air in and moving smoke. And the next thing I know, I looked up and I could see sky. And it was over with. That was it. I mean, you know, the whole building had collapsed on side. You didn't know it from the outside. From our perspective outside, I'm sure you could tell it from the front, but out back, you couldn't tell anything because it was a brick wall.
I remember getting there and asking the battalion chief in charge. I'll never, ever forget that poor guy as long as I live. I'll never forget looking at him, Chief, what do you need? What do you need from us? What can we do to help? And he had that dazed look, and I'll never forget. He had a flat top haircut, as I recall, and he had ashes in his hair, and he had been in and out of that back door I don't know how many times, and he was just, I suppose he was just in shock as to, what had occurred. I'm sure he probably never got over that. Would be my guess. I know I wouldn't.
Now, when we were heading through the restaurant, yeah, it was still a major fire. There were more people that were coming through the back, and next thing I know, I'm hearing Chief Deal's voice. And he was a very dominant figure out there. You could see that he was really taking control of everything. And then he said, I want you and Wynn out. I want y'all to come out. And I'm like, we just got in. I'm fine. We're good. And then he yelled at me and he said, get your ass out right now. I'm telling you, get out. And I'm like, okay. So we got out, and we're all in a daze because we're like, we don't know that they're trapped, that they're still in there.
Bridget was inside, and they came, you could hear the bells, and they were coming out. And I'm not proud of all this different stuff that I'm gonna tell you, like as far as us, nowadays self-dispatching, and there's some things here. Well, they came out, and we didn't ask permission. We just took the line and went in. So we now went back inside. If they're in there, we're not doing any good being outside, is how we felt about it. I wouldn't tolerate that now as a command officer, but I'm just telling you, back then things were a little different, and especially in the back. It was chaotic. I mean, there was fire everywhere above us, not directly above us because the roof had already come down, but we're standing on all this stuff, and there's oil burning, the edges all around it. It's somewhere through here, King got the water supply established, and ladder 2 was put into service.
Captain Wooten come up and said, hey, he wanted me to take and hand walk our names off the tags around to Incident Command, which was in the front. I walked around the east side up to the north side, and that was the first time I saw how many engines and pieces we had out there. And I overheard somebody talking about Frank and Johnny still in the building. And that was the first time that I had any inkling that they weren't out of the building, that they were still in there. And I'm thinking, oh hell, there's no way they could survive being in that building, not with the roof collapsing like that. So that is pretty much when it hit me what was going on at that point in time.
The entire response structure had imploded when we got there. There was no structure. It was chaos. And that's not being critical of any of my predecessors who were there, who had set up the initial response, God bless them. I know what I experienced when I got there, and I got there 20 minutes into the fire, 30 minutes into the fire. I can't imagine what it was like to be John Hudgins or Frank Young or Herbie Myers, who was on, the pump operator on engine 3.
Combination of tunnel vision and denial of being on the scene and watching this thing go from, typical working fire to a partial collapse, to a call for help, to a total collapse, to a fully engulfed auto parts store with people inside so quickly that there was still a mentality in the fireground strategy to do rescue. There was two things going on. One, they had not given up hope that they were wrong, that the accountability was wrong, and that crew was still somewhere alive.
Told Chief Elias, we got to stop this fire. That's job one now. So we're dealing with the fact that, yes, we have 2 missing firefighters. But folks, we've got a 3-alarm fire here, and it's walking the dog, and if we're not careful, we're going to lose this whole shopping center. We've got to stop this fire. So Ed went forward, he became forward, he was the operations chief, he became forward command, I became the incident commander. I set up the incident command system, opened up the battalion chief's car, and started putting the stuff in place. It wasn't even in place. The pass had not been done. There was no accountability on the scene. We had no idea where companies were. We did not know who was in the front, who was on the A side, B side, C side, D side, nothing.
It wasn't coming together fast enough for people to process the fact for me stepping on the scene as a fresh chief officer, assuming command and looking at this and just making that gut hardcore decision. They're not coming out. The accountability is right. They're not. They're in there. They're not on the fire ground at this point in time. You just do your size up. You do your recon. You do your face-to-face. And then as chief officer arriving on the scene, you just come to that decision is life's not tenable in that. And they're not coming out. That they're not alive. And guys, that we can't sit here and deny and hope, that they're somewhere else. And then worse than that is to even think about sending somebody to do a rescue because there's nobody to rescue. And that was that cross point of just absolutely coming to terms with fire ground truth that we just lost 2 firefighters and that they're not coming out of that building. They're not coming out.
He went one over and said that this is it. This is where we're going to stop it. This is where we're going to put the deluge, and this is where we're going to stop it. So that was he started implementing the tactics based on strategies that he knew could stop that fire in its forward progression. And then we could, once we got it stopped, then we could contain it and then eventually eliminate it, and then we could move in for what ultimately became recovery. We knew there was no hope for rescue. That rescue was out of the question. If you saw the fire in the Advance Auto store, it was complete, total burnout. All those flammable liquids, all those combustibles, all the paper products in there, all the filters, all of that stuff was on fire at one time. It was the thermal column, the heat, the BTUs being emitted was unbelievable. I know we almost lost engine 3 a couple of times.
We had firefighters in an absolute daze, but they were still in that state of hope, whereas when I got on the scene, that window of hope was much smaller and the window of reality was much bigger. How do we take care of our people? Because they were walking wounded. The hard fact that if our people were in there, they are no longer alive.
I went there as an observer, but quickly became aware that Johnny and Frank were missing. Started doing some non-emergent tasks. I think it was, water or something, getting water jugs up to them, consoling, some of the members that were, that I came across, and they were spread kind of throughout, the complex. Of course, they were still fighting a fire, but you could visibly see on people's faces that, something drastic had happened. So catastrophic.
I look up, and this young volunteer firefighter shows up. 16 years old, 17 years old. He's hanging out with his dad at the fire station, Steve Young, Frank Young's son. Shows up on the scene. Where's my dad? Where's my dad? Where's my dad? And of course, nobody wants to answer that question. He comes to me. Chief, where's my dad? Where's my dad? So I had to deal with it. And I had to deal with him. I took him back to Sean. I moved him over and I told him, I said, let me tell you something, son. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. But you gotta, we're trying our best. We gotta wait. I can't answer your question right now, but I will as soon as we can. But I need for you to be strong, and I need you to stay over here. I need you to stay here. Don't try to go into the scene. Don't go around the scene. Stay here. And he did. But he called his grandmother, Frank's mother. She lives in Virginia Beach. So now I'm at the command post. Now I look up and I see firefighter's mother is now on the scene. And so now I'm calling dispatch police chaplains to the scene. I need chaplaincy support. So police chaplains came to the scene. and I started assigning this chaplains to administer to those.
And Richard was operating the ladder truck as far as directing the flow of the stream. I laddered the building and got up on the parapet wall and stood on it. You couldn't see where the fire was on the other side of the wall. So I got up there and I would just direct Richard with my finger this way, that way, and he would move the ladder around to hit the hot spots inside the fire, inside the building. We get it put out, and I bump into Mark Edwards. He was the safety officer, I believe. He said, "Dwight, we're looking for 2 people." I said, "Customers or employees?" He goes, "No, firefighters." I'm like, the fire was out. We were walking through the building. I said, "Who is it?" He says, "Johnny and Frank." I said, "No."
Dwight and I were going up and down those rows just trying to find something. I mean, there was so much debris. It was, 2-3 foot high of debris. Stuff had fallen in and burned, and the ceiling and everything else was on the floor, and you couldn't find anything. And I often wondered how many times I passed by or over those guys and not even knew it. And shortly after that, they called us out, and we gathered around back. We're waiting, and what a long wait that was.
We got to tell you guys something. Virginia Beach is going to take over this fire now. Overhaul, basically. And we just want you to know that Johnny and Frank were trapped inside this fire and did not make it out. And I remember I was standing there beside Luke, and I just looked at his face and I thought, oh my God. It was just such a surreal thing. You just couldn't believe it. So I put my arm around him, and at that point, I don't know who it was, said, "Let's kneel and pray." So we prayed back there, and
I look up on my left, and Chief Dizell from Virginia Beach Fire Department is walking across the parking lot.
Their chief came to Henry and said, "Look, your guys don't need to go in there and see this. They're buddies like that. We'll go in. We'll get them ready for y'all to bring out." And that's what they did.
The 2 companies, 10 and 23, from Virginia Beach had gone to Oklahoma, had been to these things that what we're going to find, we have already seen, and that it would be best if we handled that part. So okay, that's what we got to do. And so we go back in and we're picking up stuff and moving it and trying to get it. And Captain Prentice, at the time, Master Firefighter Scott Prentice says, "I got them. I found them." They were obviously gone, but we knew enough to know not to move them. So
my crew, I still remember to this day, it was hard for me to get my guys to come out of there. Once we went in and helped locate Frank and Johnny, my guys didn't want to leave them. It's that brotherhood. It's that, it doesn't matter county or city lines. That makes no difference. So we helped locate them initially, and then stayed with them until we're extricating, getting them out of the building, and all the investigative things that needed to be done. Our fire chief, Chief Dizell, he was very adamant about making sure that we did the necessary things on scene, so we didn't compromise the investigation, so that all of the line of duty death benefits and all of those sorts of things would be in place. We weren't thinking that.
But y'all had identifying stuff on the inside of the turnout coat. I mean, we knew who it was, but we had to positively identify them. So we took their coats apart, unbuckled them, and for as long as I live, I'll never forget this, is like their shirts were our blue, our blue t-shirts, and they were just sweaty. It looked like you could touch it and they'd be all right. The beyond recognition part you didn't look at, but right there, that part was brutal. It was just like you wanted to put your hand on them and say, okay, now come on, because it just looked like it should look. That little picture box of what you were looking at right there. And yes, we had done some of this in Oklahoma, so it wasn't completely it wasn't our first time doing it. We had to move them apart from each other. You were trying to be respectful. But one of them something had probably happened and the other one was helping the other one. They were doing what we do. It wasn't a drag, I don't think that, but I do think it was arm in arm, like we were trying to get out of this. They were trying to get the hell out of there. And then, if anything could be any worse at that moment, was to zip the bag closed. Because that was the end. That was the end. We didn't want to take them out the front door because there was the media and the way the building is, we had the back way more cordoned off for the respect and all that. And by then the captain was back, John, and we handed him over. He was right there to receive him. And I just remember thinking how brutal that had to be for him. I was in the front, so when I had to hand it over, I'm looking right at him to hand it over to him. And I won't ever forget that. I can't explain if my head was still in the operations part. I don't know, but I know that for that particular notification, it was extremely difficult. But a lot of that is a blur for me.
I was still pretty much in shock like everybody else on the scene was. We just lost 2 people.
They had buses that came up to the advanced auto and loaded everyone that was on that scene fighting that fire in a gigantic circle to debrief everyone. Let people talk and let them,
It was just absolutely raw emotions for the folks that were there and the fellow crew members. But again, there was an attempt made to get everybody together at one place, try to give some comfort, try to have some debriefing before we sent them home. And as any of us would do, is nobody wanted to go home, everybody wanted to stay. And so we had to work our way through that. And as I said, we also had a city to protect. And a lot of the stations were on that call because it's such a big event. So we had to, call back and hire back, restaff, and, a lot of hose to pick up. It was just a long operation that went all through the night. We got light towers out there, and we were out there all afternoon and through the night, just, picking up and putting the pieces together.
Well, after that debriefing, I don't remember anything for about 3 days, to be honest with you. I really don't. It was just, trying to absorb it and get through it.
They sent us home, and I didn't want to go home because I'm a fireman, I'm supposed to be on my engine. But they sent us home, and I was angry about that at the time, but it was the best thing they could have ever done. Smartest thing they could have done. And I wasn't smart enough to see it at the time.
And then they started pulling us off the scene.
And the guy said, everybody that's on this scene, hey, all you guys, you're relieved of duty.
They sent us home.
No next of kin notification, Frank, they were standing right there next to me. We put them in a police car, with the chaplain put them in a police car and had them safe and secure on the scene. Then came this thing, Allison Hudgins. What do we do about Allison? We have to start getting busy. We have to find her. So we call over to Old Dominion, we explain to them what's going on, so they go through the search, and they finally get us to the school where the school where the dental hygiene program was located, and that person said, oh yeah, she's doing a clerkship in a dentist office over in Newport News. So I get a chaplain, I get my brother, and I get John Hawkins. And I asked them, y'all please get in a car and go get her and make notification and bring her home.
That's a tough assignment. You're taking that news that's going to shatter a family forever. In our particular case, you're telling the spouse who has a 3-year-old right there in the house, and that spouse happens to be 7 months pregnant while you're making that notification.
It was Chief Elliott, myself, and Chief Bolak went to the Hudgins home, which was in Los Gaviotas. And I never will forget that. I had been appointed, Chief asked me if I would be the liaison to the families. I had been holding it together all day, and I walked in, and the first thing I see is John's son, 3 years old. 3 years old. As soon as I saw that little boy, who's now a firefighter in Chesapeake, I lost it. I lost it.
You know, obviously, you know, we worked all that day, you know, just about all of that night, you know, changed, you know, got a shower, changed uniforms, and then the very next day, then we started, you know, this recovery process. And, you know, for a solid week, we would work during the day, meet with funeral homes, plan funerals, meet with families, coordinate, you know, with, you know, what had to be done professionally with the investigations. We would go out and visit the stations because they were hurting and grieving. I remember going down Cedar Road and crossing Dominion Boulevard, and the emotions allowed me to be a human being with a heart. And that was the first time I was able to hurt, you know, for the 2 firefighters that we lost.
We had every station backfilled so that every firefighter could go to the services. We had New York firefighters come down here and backfilled our stations on the days these services were held. We had firefighters from everywhere coming in and staffing our equipment.
Chesapeake Fire Headquarters sounding last alarm for firefighter specialist Frank Eric Young. July 13, 1957, March 18, 1996.
Chesapeake Fire Headquarters sounding last alarm for firefighter specialist John R. Hudgins, Jr. January 26, 1964, March 18, 1996.
People up and down the road taking hats off, praying, crying. You could see kids. I mean, it was tremendous.
The procession was amazing. I mean, it was hard not to get chills.
There was a couple of schools, the elementary schools, they let the kids out and brought them up to the fence, you know, on the road. And I can remember all those little kids standing out there, you know, saluting us or holding flags as we came by.
These mist-covered mountains are a home now for me. But my home is the lowlands, and always will be. Someday you'll return to your valleys and your farms, and you'll no longer burn to be brothers in arms.
The outpouring of community support that just came from everywhere, you know, because we were hurting, the neighborhoods came out.
Through these fields of destruction, baptisms of fire, I've witnessed your suffering as the battle reached high. And though it had been so bad, in the fear and alarm, you did not desert me, my brothers in arms.
To see the people that showed up, oh my gosh, it was just unreal. There were people lined up for miles, and trucks came from everywhere. It really touched you, man. It was like, wow.
There's so many different worlds, so many different suns, and we have just one world, but we live in different ones.
I can remember at their funerals, in their funeral procession, there were people that were lying in the streets, almost like they were waiting for a parade for something. People really cared, and you felt that way from the citizens. And, you know, just the outpouring from other departments. I mean, people from all over the United States came to their funerals.
Now the sun's gone to hell, the moon's riding high. Let me bid you farewell. Every man has to die, but it's written in the starlight, in every line in your palm. We're fools to make war on our brothers in arms.
And you look back now, and what an outpouring of community support. The cards that came in, the handwritten notes, everywhere you went, you know, especially Station 3 and 4. Both of those signs out there, they were covered with flowers and, you know, makeshift bouquets and you know, thank you cards and posters. And both of those stations, the public just converged.
The one thing that I wanted to make sure as a fire chief, when I became fire chief, was that they would not have died in vain. The memory of Johnny and Frank would be forever. And we approached the manager and the council to have that fire station named in their memory.
cause was an accident created by an employee of the VEPCO, Virginia Power Company, in the rear of the building. This created a large electrical short which started the fire inside the Advanced Auto Store.
There wasn't much visible fire inside when Hudgins and Young entered. They didn't see the fire break through the roof. They couldn't know there was an inferno above them.
So certainly they were doing what they were supposed to do. That was to enter the building and try to locate the seat of the fire.
Instead, the fire they couldn't see found them. They made no apparent mistake, but almost everything that could go wrong did.
We want to do such a detailed report on this and investigation. We hope that the lesson learned will prevent this from happening in the future, both for this department and for the fire service across the country.
The firefighters would bury two of their own, two more in a long line of fallen heroes, and then go on. But they'll never forget them or how they died.
Tom Cook was our fire marshal at that time, and that's what they did. From that point on, emotions aside, you're doing a double fatality fire investigation, and they just went through their investigative process.
Tom Cook and Tom Kaleka went out of their way to make sure that everything was handled in a very neutral, concise, fact-finding mission.
It was like any other fatality investigation, only it was two of our own, and it was a significant fire.
Checked everything, found out some pump panel lights were out, and that was an issue. Just a lot of minor stuff, nothing major, in my opinion, nothing that led to the death of Johnny and Frank. Is the way we were taught to. That's what I'm saying. They were taught to do what they did, and that's what cost them their life.
The investigation's always broken into two different parts. One is the death investigation and one is the fire investigation. We tried to keep that death investigation and the evidence recovery at the scene totally separate and really limited, so it didn't expose the firefighters that worked with Johnny and Frank to have to dig them out of the pile of rubble and things like that. NFPA 921 has the investigative standards and guidelines, and we just wanted to make sure that everything was followed and everything was done the right way. I mean, I'd worked a number of fatalities before, but this hit home when it was your people. We took everything down from the wire that broke, that the truck hit, to the electrical circuit breaker box, the whole panel itself, the grounding wire that was there. We took the fire hose, we took Frank and Johnny's gear, what was left of it. We took, everything. We collected everything just like a regular crime scene, more or less.
Fire investigators, they had to do their thing too, because this could be a crime scene. We don't know. We don't know what we don't know at that time. So you have to go in using protocols of what might be, not what is.
All the wiring within the building became overcharged at one time, probably setting off a series of fires through the void area above the drop ceiling and below the actual roof line itself.
When we did our origin and cause determinations, it didn't have a good ground at the circuit breaker box. So what it started doing was going on and finding a ground everywhere else. So as you can imagine, like a water heater has a ground. That's where a fire started. The HVAC has a ground. That's where a fire started. So there was basically like multiple fires up in that concealed space. And Johnny and Frank had no idea that the fire was going and progressed as much as it did. One of the things that was part of the investigation that we didn't talk about was the recovery of the bodies and things like that. Me and Joyce Jenkins at the time, she was one of the investigators. Me and her actually recovered the bodies, and then we allowed the firefighters to take the bodies out and do their thing outside, and then they were transported to the medical examiner's office, and then obviously the next day we went to the autopsy, and they performed the autopsy, and we made sure to collect whatever evidence we needed there and provide the information to the medical examiner for proper documentation and for the autopsy report. I collected the dispatch 911 calls, the recordings of the radio traffic at the time. Chief Williams was
concerned that he had missed something. I mean, I had to play that recording over and over and over just to understand it, you know. So it was like, it's not like, you know, if you're on a scene and you only hear it one time, you don't get any do-overs. You can't play that recording over and over. Me and him talked about that, and you know, I think that sort of helped him some.
That fire, Charlie was never the same. It did something to him because he wanted to assume the responsibility for those 2 fatalities. That load came down on Charlie Williams as a chief officer, and he could not let that go.
Chief Williams probably suffered the most. I think he had a really tough time with it. He was a great chief, and you know, unfortunately, I think this affected him to the point where he was just, you know, I think he took a lot of guilt.
Chief Williams was just, yeah. You'll never hear a negative word about him from me.
The stress of that incident, the stress of what chief officers were going through at that time. Charlie Williams had a fatal heart attack. Knowing the whole story as I do, and knowing Charlie as I do, I'll go to my grave knowing that 3 people died at Advance Auto, and Charlie was one of them as battalion chief, because he took that load, and he could not shake the load that he was in charge, you know, as one of the incident commanders on that.
People from all over the United States came to their funerals, and our department had never experienced that before to that level. And I hope that we never do again, because it tore this department apart, but it also brought this department together. And I know that doesn't sound correct, but that's what happened. It was put back together through leadership. And I'm talking about leadership from the top down to the lowest person, to the newest firefighter.
We want a mission statement, one that you could actually remember. We dedicate ourselves, you know, to protect and improve your quality of life by providing responsive and caring service. That's a pretty good starting point. Now let's build a fire department off of why we're here. That's where the Vitals book came in.
The changes that came out of that, as you say, out of the ashes rises the phoenix. And I think that's why it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we will always profit, learn as much as we can from our experiences. And that's something the fire service has always been good at. You know, doing a hot wash after every event, what went right, what went wrong, where can we improve? Those things are so vitally important, and they're timeless. They're timeless. You have to do them even today. Now the dimensions and how you do it and the stuff you use to do it and the technology that's available to do it, you know, that's all changing too, and that's going to continue to change.
At the national level, having a double firefighter fatality, 2 in, and there was nobody out as a RIT team or as a rescue team. And, you know, as that thing unfolded, that became the poster child across America to hold up and say, this is why we need 2 in and 2 out. And that was a tipping point. It probably dialed back that hardcore, aggressive firefighting because it was just down and dirty, you know, get the wet stuff to the red stuff. And that was fighting fire. And anything less than that was really not fighting fire. And I think that changed a lot of mentality for those of us that came up that were trained that way. We're going to risk a little to save a little. We'll risk a lot to save a lot. But we're not going to risk a lot for nothing. We're just not going to do that.
It is kind of a shock to your system when you think, yeah, we go to work every day and we don't know what the day is going to be like. You know, we may not come home, and but I don't think any of us really thought about that. You know what I mean? And so yeah, I think it brought us closer because we knew we had to take care of each other. Now, we had to make sure we had each other's back. Where before maybe we didn't rely so much as a team, you know? So I think that was a culture that changed.
As far as doing the job, it didn't change me, but the way you go about doing the job. changed. Still love fighting fire. Till the day I retired, I loved it. But the way you go about doing it, you have to look at accomplishing the goals in a safe way.
You guys out here, don't think you know it all. You can learn something new every day. Just keep training, because it may save your life one day.
To make sure we don't have this incident again, we were much more, our communications on radios, to be better, what we talk and who gets on a radio during, we had a lot of people talking on the radio that day that shouldn't have been talking, should have been left open for the units on the scene. And so that made it, different. I think that we also looked at, when you get information back, oh, it's nothing, you're maybe slow down, but you don't turn units around, or, you don't take necessarily what you hear from, you treat everything as serious as it should be. And so there's that whole thing of just, looking at different things, and we had a lot of different things come out of it. The trust program, to look at buildings, going around, and one, obviously, to me it had a twofold thing. And one, it marked the buildings where you knew that had that, but two, it got us out into a lot of these buildings to see where you're at, and got guys to know their first run areas better, and find things and do things, so again, to make them more prepared if they ever run into something like that again.
The way that we viewed lightweight wood truss systems definitely changed. It still does today. Pulling the ceiling was another big one. You just didn't destroy property unnecessarily. You would work your way through that. But it, immediately after that, regionally, everybody's policies changed. That if you get any indication of smoke overhead, those ceiling tiles are a lot less inexpensive than risking your firefighter for something that could be up there. Is just rip them out. That changed immediately.
One of the most important changes was the radio communication system. At that particular time, we were dealing with a VHF. I'm going to use the word antiquated. Antiquated VHF, one repeated channel radio system for our department. And we had a fireground channel. Fireground channel was just a talk around channel. For those who don't know what a talk around channel is, it's just basically a line of sight. It's probably about half a mile or less. So if you had two incidents that were working within that half a mile, they would be talking all over top of each other all the time. We didn't use that a lot. We just used our regular dispatch channel. So if you can imagine this incident going on, there were still calls for service that were coming in. They had to dispatch them. So extremely chaotic, just to say the least. 2001, we put a portable radio in every seat of the apparatus. Along with that came what we classify as an emergency button. Some people call it the orange button. So if you get in trouble, you push that orange button and you call a mayday or, emergency whatever issue that you actually have, and you want to get out. March 18th, 1996, we did not have that feature at all. So technology also changed from 96 to 2001, that you had the ability to have that emergency channel. We went from one dispatch channel, one fireground channel, to one dispatch channel and basically 10 tactical channels that we could use on any type of incident, which was a game changer for us, because now we could, not only could you work those incidents on different TAC channels, but they also had the ability to be recorded, where previous to that, if you were on that fireground channel, all that information was not recorded. We went to a new radio system in 2018, 2019 timeframe, to a Harris radio system, and we did the same type of testing in regards to that too. So since I've been in the department, which is 38 years, I've had the opportunity to implement 2 different radio systems within the city, from the antiquated VHF system that we had initially when I came in the department in 1984.
So it's been a good day out here at Advance. A lot of memories bubbling up. What's done my heart good is to see the group that was here that day come back together. I've personally witnessed a lot of healing going on, a lot of stories that were being exchanged, a lot of recollections coming back up. Probably 27 years overdue, but we saw a lot of therapeutic healing taking place out here. I would consider the ground that we stand on right here sacred ground. If you were here that day, you would understand that. But I could see it in these guys as they walked around. You could just sense them going back in time and what they experienced here. So we appreciate what the training staff has done, the foresight, the vision that they had to put this documentary together, to bring the folks back out here, let them tell their stories from first-person perspective, because that's what's real. We just appreciate that. So thank you, the training staff, and we really want to thank the guys that came out here and shared their stories with us.
District 301, 4323 Indian River Road, Family Dollar for commercial structure fire.
Agent 3, Chesapeake.
And then 3.
29 years exactly after the Frank and Johnny fire. So just responding to that, like I said, we didn't think about it initially, but after an hour or so in the incident and thinking, we're like, man, we were 2 units down from, where these guys responded to for a similar fire due to a power line that had an issue that caught the building on fire as well. And just like, when we turned into the shopping center, we had nothing showing either. There was nothing indicating a working fire until we made it to that unit. Make us think back on what Frank and Johnny did, and they did all the right things, and just things can go wrong sometimes. Really just keep learning and ensure that, we just continue to always do the right thing and try to be as safe as possible with any of these commercial buildings.
The level of concern obviously was ramped up based on the history of that shopping center, and especially after Frank and Johnny's, that we have to fight commercial fires differently than we fight residential fires.
Regarding a possible commercial structure fire causing black smoke coming out of the old A1 transmission.
Sunday morning, the sounds of praise were smoked out by a raging fire in the 200 block of Liberty Street. The firefighters from Chesapeake and Norfolk rushed to the scene with plans for an aggressive attack, but because of the nature of the inferno, first responders had to back down and use ladders to attack the blaze.
Billowing smoke and flames rise above the ashes in the building that housed Advance Auto Parts and 2 other adjoining businesses.
It was all too reminiscent of the Advance Auto fire that claimed the lives of 2 Chesapeake firefighters in 1996. I covered the Advance Auto fire in 1996. The tragedy forever changed how firefighters nationwide respond to certain buildings.
President Lincoln stated, "The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us." So as President Lincoln shares, it is not for us to dedicate this ground or memorialize it, not here at Station 3, not across the street at Old Station 3, and not up the street at the Advance Auto store. Firefighter Specialist Frank Young and Firefighter Specialist Johnny Hudgins did that 30 years ago today. But it is our responsibility, it is our duty to never forget and to be dedicated to the unfinished work that they fought so valiantly to advance. And on this 30th year, on this solemn date, I can say with confidence that we have not forgotten. and that we have advanced the unfinished work of our brothers. The lessons learned from that fateful day are burned into the psyche and culture of our members in our department.
"30 years ago today, two men left their homes and reported for duty. They did what they had done hundreds of times before. The alarm sounded, they put on their gear in that building across the street, they climbed aboard engine 3, and they answered the call. Only that tragic day, they did not come home."
And units, please stand by for an important message. Repeating, all stations and units, please stand by for an important message.
Chesapeake Down Station, all units. Chesapeake to all stations, all units. On the 30th anniversary, please join me in observing a moment of silence in memory of our brother firefighters who answered their last alarm and paid the supreme sacrifice while serving our citizens on incident 963073 at 4345 Indian River Road, Advance Auto Parts Store. All personnel will now maintain a moment of silence in memory of firefighter specialist John R. Hudgins, Jr., badge number 323. Firefighter specialist Frank E. Young, badge number 236. Chesapeake to all stations, all units. The Chesapeake Fire Department honors the memory of firefighter specialist John R. Hudgins, Jr. and firefighter specialist Frank E. Young, and remembers their contributions to the department and the city they served. We continue to pray for their families and the many thousands of firefighters, paramedics, police officers, and dispatchers who continue to provide vital, life-rendering services every day to keep America safe. God bless each of you, and God bless America. All units may now resume normal radio transmissions.
30 years ago today, March 1996, the Chesapeake Fire Department was living in a world that we thought we could put out any size fire. No fire, no job was too big. The members of the Chesapeake Fire Department thought we were first-class firefighters and we could handle any situation we were handed. To this day, when I think about Johnny and Frank as firefighters, I can't think of anybody in the Chesapeake Fire Department that was any more capable than them. Frank and Johnny loved the Chesapeake Fire Department and were proud to wear the uniform and proud that they always gave the best to the citizens of Chesapeake. The day started out like any other one, was going about their daily tasks, like it was any other Monday. Little did anyone know that all our worlds were going to change in ways we couldn't even imagine. Even today, 30 years later, we still have a hard time fully understanding the events of March 18, 1996.
I think that it's one of the best jobs in the world. I think the dynamics and the family dynamics that you share with the people that you work with are beyond a lot of other occupations comprehension. You know, you can't imagine, you sleep, you eat with these people. When you're put in situations that are super dangerous and that you rely on that person to have your back, it's more than a job,
I've never seen the caliber of people that represent the Chesapeake Fire Department. And I know we all have our problems and we all have our issues, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna tell you, the Chesapeake Fire Department is second to none.
Call comes in, a truck goes out with red, blue lights and a siren sound. They race so fast, cause they know that in times like this, every second counts. Consumed by fear and smoke-filled tears, the families pray for the ones they love, while they rush in without second guessing, full force into a burning house. No matter the day, no matter the hour, without a delay, they answer the call. Extraordinary men and women, born with bravery and selfless service, into the flames, risking it all. They answer the call. Screams still haunt their dreams, cause once you've heard them you can't forget. But still they fight to save our lives, knowing if they died it would all be worth it. No matter the day, no matter the hour, without a delay, they answer the call. Extraordinary men and women, born with bravery and selfless service, into the flames, risking it all. They answer the call. They answer the call. Their pride runs deep, their bond stays strong. They stand up tall. No matter the day, no matter the hour, without a delay, they answer the call. Extraordinary men and women, born with bravery and selfless service, into the flames, risking it all. Risking it all. They answer the call. They answer the call.